Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about the biggest movie of the year and perhaps of all time, Avengers Endgame. In just 11 days in theaters, the Disney and Marvel Studios film has earned more than $2.19 billion worldwide. So, needless to say, this is unheard of in the film industry. Previously, the fastest a film had ever surpassed $2 billion at the box office took 47 days. That film was 2009's Avatar, and as of Sunday's estimates, Endgame has already surpassed Jurassic Park, Avengers Infinity War, Star Wars The Force Awakens, and Titanic to become the second highest grossing film of all time, still just trailing a tad behind the aforementioned Avatar, directed by James Cameron. But this crowd-pleasing, massive culmination of 22 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies event, well, it has not been without its own controversies. Avengers Endgame first had a rocky start when many were worried about Captain Marvel being in it, thinking she might be some sort of lame Deus Ex Machina that would save everybody at the end of the movie. Fortunately, that didn't happen. And also, it was very fortunate for Marvel that Brie Larson's pre-release interviews in the press weren't bad enough to tank the picture, even though it seemed like she was trying to ruin it with those silly interviews. Next, we saw the social justice warrior complaints start pouring in, some having gripes about the film's supposed underrepresentation of gay people. Then, Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, the communist-in-chief himself, well, he suggested that Avengers Endgame should redistribute its wealth and share its hard-earned profits with its workers at Disney and Marvel, something which they already have done. And obviously these were all some pretty ludicrous complaints about the movie, but you won't believe what the left-wingers are whining about this week. This time it's MTV News who is taking aim at our beloved blockbuster. Why, you might ask? Well, one of the writers claims that Endgame's long runtime is some sort of hidden offense towards people with disabilities. That's right. Shouldn't be too surprising coming from MTV News, but this does have to be some kind of new low for them. Their stupidity is truly astounding, so without further ado, let's go ahead and check out that story. The article's called Avengers Endgame's 3-hour runtime is a stark reminder of Hollywood's hidden ableism. This should be good. Let's go ahead and take a look. The hype for Avengers Endgame has been felt deeply within fandom and on social media for months. The massive record-breaking opening box office haul was a sheer indicator of the excitement for the film. For many, this movie represents a closing to a chapter, but there is an unspoken stumbling block that may prevent many fans from participating in the cultural phenomenon in theaters. The runtime of the film, which clocks in at 3 hours and 2 minutes. The long runtime isn't a huge surprise. This is, after all, the conclusion to the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Infinity Saga, and some of our favorite heroes' journeys are expected to come to an end. Some fans even celebrate the hefty length, wanting to savor every last moment with the Avengers as we know them. For disabled fans, however, particularly those with disabilities interfere with their bladder control, the runtime can feel daunting and inhibitory. Okay, first of all, having to pee during a long-ass movie isn't just a problem for disabled people. I sometimes can't make it through a 2-hour movie without taking a little potty break, but that doesn't mean I'm going to blame the movie or its creators for it. This woke posturing and standing up for fringe minority groups is really getting out of hand. I get it, MTV, you want to appear virtuous, like you're standing up for the little guy, but really, we have all seen through your ruse for a while now. As we've seen with your most notorious and obnoxious figure on this, Francesca Ramsey, well, we've all learned over the years that people from MTV like Franny, they don't actually care about the minorities and others they stand up for. They don't care about fairness or human rights either. Really, they just want to appear to care publicly, hence being called virtue signalers. That means they're not actually virtuous. They are just pretending to be in the public sphere in order to garner attention, views, and sympathy towards their issues. Disability within fandoms and in Hollywood is constantly overlooked, whether that's in connection to casual tweets to just deal with the runtime and hold your pee until the credits, or in regards to broader accessibility and inclusion issues, such as limited or no captioning made available to disabled moviegoers. The stark ableism of such remarks discounts the predicament disabled fans are faced with and makes them feel invisible and isolated in spaces they occupy. As in the case of Endgame, longer runtimes bring to the surface the discussion of PMath, a hashtag created and used by the disability community over the past few years. PMath is calculating how long we could be out and about, or in this case, sitting in a dark theater before we may need a bathroom break. Wow, just wow. First of all, there's already a mini solution to this PMath stuff. It's an app called RunP that actually lists out and helps people find boring, slow, or less important times during movies when they can take a bathroom break. It's especially helpful for long movies like Avengers Endgame. And no, I'm not sponsored by this app, I'm just recommending it to you. And the other thing I want to mention is about this accessibility stuff, this inclusion thing that MTV appears to be demanding from the movie makers. Well, first of all, there are already lots of accessibility options out there. There's theaters with captions, headsets, wheelchair access, and all of that. And sure, it might not be in every theater or in every town, but they certainly have it in places that necessitate it. I mean, what does MTV expect the film industry to do here? Make all movies with subtitles and intermission breaks every hour? Are we really saying we should inconvenience and push aside the large majority of regular moviegoers just so a small, less than 1% of disabled or handicapped viewers can have a slightly better time? There are certainly more reasonable ways around this, surely, like finding a better theater or going to see a movie twice and catching up on what you missed during your first bathroom break. Or they could just wait until a movie comes out on DVD or a streaming site. There are lots of other more reasonable and already available solutions to this non-problem presented by MTV. The other thing that just seems weird to me here is how MTV News doesn't seem to understand what disabled and handicapped means. I mean, no offense to them either. God bless these people with these kinds of situations or problems, but let's also not try and pretend there isn't an issue with them. If these people were born without issues or if they hadn't gotten injured severely, then they wouldn't be disabled at all, would they? They would just be people, average, fully functioning, able to watch movies and schedule their potty breaks accordingly. But unfortunately, they can't do that. But MTV wants to change the whole world to accommodate them. And that will of course never work. There will be a slippery slope this way too, that will cause all movie makers and theaters to go bankrupt, trying to appease a radical few, instead of aiming for the wider general audiences, which is what works and makes them money. Being vulnerable to kidney infections, I drink a lot of water, roughly 10 glasses a day. In addition, I have high blood pressure and take a diuretic, among my other medications. Jeanette M. tells MTV News, I have to time log events such as concerts, plays, movies just right, so I'm not uncomfortable. God forbid an SJW gets uncomfortable. For Jeanette, having no access to a restroom for over 2 hours requires altering her medication schedule and limiting liquid intake for 4 or 5 hours prior to the event. Those barriers weren't going to stop her from seeing Endgame in theaters, but did require her to carefully map her schedule. In an effort to minimize her discomfort and maintain as much of her wellness routine as possible, Jeanette resolved to attend a 7:45 a.m. screening, which would allow her to halt her liquid intake starting at 7 p.m. the night before, and wait until after the movie to take her morning pills. Sounds like Jeanette is doing the adult thing here. Instead of expecting the world to change and bend to her will, Jeanette is taking her own life into her own hands. Sure, it sounds pretty inconvenient and time-consuming, but this is what it takes to deal with a life that involves special diets and medications. In fact, this is the same kind of planning an average person might go through in this kind of situation. I know MTV and their ilk always want to think they are the special ones, but I too had to do quite a bit of planning to make my Endgame experience perfect and not uncomfortable. I'm talking about ordering the tickets online weeks before, getting work done extra early that day, and eating right and making sure you're not too hungry when you get to the theater that night, which we showed up to about 30 minutes early so we could have time to buy snacks, wait in line, find our seats, and take one final bathroom break before the thing starts. And this isn't even mentioning my timing and working out when I'm going to smoke and get stoned, so I could be high enough to experience this movie fully. So needless to say, there's a lot that goes into these kinds of movie nights, especially when it's a 3-hour affair like this film, Avengers Endgame. But the idea that the disabled are the only ones having to plan out things is pretty ridiculous. Sure, it's going to be harder and more inconvenient for them sometimes, but that's really no one else's fault. It's not their fault either, certainly, but it's also not the theater or the filmmaker's fault either, which is what MTV News is implying. Expecting disabled people, or anyone for that matter, to hold their pee for 3 hours is exclusionary, particularly when you add into the equation the full dynamics of the movie-going experience, which include not just the length of the film itself, but also the customary mid- and post-credit scenes and the concessions a moviegoer looks forward to consuming. Having spina bifida does affect the bladder. If I'm going to a movie theater, I'm likely going to use the bathroom before a movie starts at a theater, Drew C. said. But if a movie is over 2 hours long, and I buy myself a medium or large drink for myself, the chances of needing to use the bathroom are pretty good. My God, nothing is as sad and petty as complaining about seeing an epic, world-changing movie with amazing actors and, oh, but you don't have time for popcorn and Mountain Dew. Boo-hoo. These SJWs really need a reality check here, huh? Making a movie that's 3 hours long is not exclusionary, whatever that means. If you can't take it, then don't go to the theater. Or you could go and miss part of the movie on your bathroom break. It's not that bad. It's not the end of the world. And it really is that simple. These are some real first world problems here, coming from one of the worst SJW-run rags on the internet, MTVnews.com. Sure, they try and attach this to disabled people like they're sticking up for them, but really, radical leftists like this just want to attack things that are popular. Simple as that. Complaining about needing a potty break during a long movie that's amazing and fun and totally worth it, well, it really doesn't get more current year, 2019, than that. The reality is that there's no one solution because everyone's needs are diverse. This is particularly so with the disabled community. What works for one person may not work for others, but that does not mean we shouldn't try to create various ways to ensure that everyone feels included in the movie-going experience. Access and availability are key issues that affect disabled people daily, and they can only be resolved if they're a part of the mainstream consciousness. Otherwise, an important consumer base will continue to be stymied from engaging in massive cultural moments such as Endgame. The disabled community has raised its concerns with the intention to be heard. Will this be the time the world's largest largest minority group is taken seriously? Or will we be dismissed by the industry once again? Jesus Christ, the world's largest minority group? Really? That sounds kind of oxymoronic if you think about it. If your group's really that big, then stop trying to get sympathy for being a minority. And as for the access and availability options, theaters already have them, and they will have them when and where it's deemed necessary and profitable. Besides that though, this MTV article really offers nothing of substance. No new ideas or suggestions on how to fix this non-problem, which they made up. In the end, they just did this to supposedly raise awareness, as if people didn't already know there are disabled people out there. Please. The real reason MTV made this article was to virtue signal, of course. They don't really care about any of these minority groups at all. All MTV really cares about is getting attention by slandering things that people like this new Avengers Endgame movie. What do you guys think? Is Avengers Endgame being exclusionary? What could we even do to fix this kind of problem? Because I don't want studios to just start making films shorter for this kind of stupid reason. Endgame's length is one of the coolest and most epic parts about it, and I hope it sets a precedent that movies can be this beefy and long in the future. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.